Hi everyone, so today's video is going to be slightly different. I'm going to be doing some common misconceptions around self-harm. So we'll go from a list I found online and we'll kind of talk through it a little bit. So number one is only females self-injure. Okay, so obviously I'm female, I self-injure. But actually it turns out that 30 to 40% of people that self-harm are male. There's another misconception that it's mainly teenage girls, and I must say that's when I started. I was 13 when I started self-harming. But it's not just, I'm now 25. It's been going on for a while, and I know a lot of people that start when they're in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s. There's no set age for it really. I think younger people have started doing it earlier because it's more prevalent now. It's more well known in the media and on the internet and things like that, so it's becoming an idea in people's minds earlier than say it would be years ago. So another point is that self-injury is a suicide attempt or a failed suicide attempt. I think out of the thousands, and that's a literal statement, the thousands of scars I have attempted to cut to kill myself once in all of those times. I was close apparently, I didn't know how close, but it was bad. But to be fair, actually I did more damage to myself standardly in normal self-injuries than I actually did in that suicide attempt, partly because I was found, but also, I don't know, whatever. It's not a suicide attempt for a lot of people. It's a way of actually preventing a suicide attempt. I know for me, I cut when I feel like it's the lesser of the evils. It's either I cut or I self-harm in another way, or I use an addiction that I have, or I binge eat, or whatever. Everyone's got an addiction in some way, I guess, whether it's caffeine, sex, the gym, gambling. We all have things that we turn to when we're struggling, and for a lot of people, sadly, self-injury is one of those things. That said, I am in no way condoning this behaviour. It is a very sad thing, it's a very tragic thing. I know I do it, I see it more tragic of other people. I'm not the best at being kind to myself, but it's sad that someone feels so bad that they have to hurt themselves to feel better. Okay, so the big point. Self-harm is just attention seeking. Personally, and I can't speak for anyone else, I'm fully aware of that, but personally it's been a very private thing for me. I was on the phone to crisis call one night and they said, will you cut while you're on the phone to us so we know you're safe and we know we need to call an ambulance if you go quiet. And that to me freaked me out, and I got why they were saying that. I completely understood the rationale behind it, but to me, even having someone on the end of the phone while I was doing it was too much. It's a very private thing for me, and I know most other people that I do know that self-harm, it is a private thing. It's not something they want people to see. It's not something they want people to witness. When I first started cutting, I think 2 friends for about 2 years of my initial cutting period knew that I was doing it. I had a friend who was doing it for attention, and to be honest, I'm going to raise this issue right now. If someone is cutting for attention, then they're clearly not well. There's something in their life that is very wrong. There's something in their emotional state that is making them struggle and suffer to the point that they feel that cutting is the best option. That's not a well mind, that's not a happy mind. And why does attention seeking always have to be bad? Yes, the ways that people do it are usually negative, sadly, or seen as negative. But asking for a hug from your mum or your best friend is attention seeking in a way. It's saying, I'm not feeling good, can you give me a hug? Calling your dog to you is attention seeking. There's lots of different attention seeking behaviours, and it definitely is a spectrum. But I think if someone is choosing to self-harm for attention, there's something wrong there. There's something that people should be concerned about and trying to help with. And I know, as I say, a lot of people I know, it's never an attention thing. When I've been in hospital and I've been cutting, I've hidden myself away where I thought no staff will find me, I won't be interrupted. It's a very private thing. It's something that's kept between that person and what they use. It's not something people will always willingly share. It's not something that people that will always be happy to show your scars. It took me a long time to wear t-shirts, and I'm sure some of you in my videos will notice that I do have scars on my arms. The scars at the bottom of my arms are the best in terms of severity. The ones at the top of my arms and elsewhere are a lot worse. I don't wear vests, I don't wear anything like that where the tops of my arms are exposed because I just don't feel comfortable with that. It took me a long time to get to the point where I could show the bottoms of my arms. I was sectioned, I was 16, I was in hospital in Middlesbrough, and I noticed people around me that had scars on their arms with their sleeves up or a t-shirt on, And I thought, well, if they can do it and they're not getting any negative attention, they're not getting picked on or anything, well, I can. And I very clearly remember the first day that I wore a t-shirt around my dad and my best friend, and I was so terrified. I was so scared that they'd comment, that they'd be upset, that they'd be angry. And they knew I'd been self-harming for quite a long time, but they'd never seen my arms. And you know what? I didn't even catch them looking. They were so understanding. They never mentioned it. And we've talked about it since then, about how hard it is for them to see my scars, never mind my cuts. And I just want to raise the issue to people that showing your scars may be seen as a negative thing from others, but not to the extent you think it will be. I was terrified, absolutely terrified when anyone seen my scars, and it took me a lot of years, about 3 or 4 years, to show my scars to anyone. Just one person, it took about 3 years. It's a hard thing to admit. It's a hard thing to show to people. I remember my doctor, my psychiatrist, when I was in CAMS, asking to see my scars. And when I finally showed her, she gasped and she looked shocked. And I remember feeling like so bad about that and being like, well, you know, she's a psychiatrist and she's shocked by my arms. This cannot be good. I must be doing something wrong. I must be a bad person. My self-worth just went down straight away. So to anyone who doesn't self-harm but has a friend that does, never judge them, never outwardly show any negative signs of attention towards that person when they actually do show their scars. It takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage. And it does feed into the whole attention seeker thing, because people say, well, yeah, they're just showing their scars, they're happy with them, or they don't care, or they want people to see. No, self-harmers have a perfect right in summer to be able to wear a t-shirt. I've sweated away in school in jumpers through summer, and I couldn't wear long sleeve shirts because I'd be still bleeding from the morning, you know. So it's a very difficult thing to show people your scars. And to me, actually, I find strangers easier to see my scars than people I care about. I know that the people that care about me and I care about them are going to be upset. They're going to be worried. A stranger on the street, yeah, you know, whatever, who cares? I've had people stare, I've had people point, but I've never had anyone ever come up to me and say, oh, what's that? What have you done? That's bad. Or you attention seeker. And I've been very fortunate. I've never had any negative attention in that way. I've had people ask me about my scars and say, you know, what's that from? What happened to your arms? I had one lady ask if my tattoos had caused it, and I thought that was quite funny. She was like in her 60s, a bit batshit crazy, possibly not in a good way. I shouldn't say that, should I? I'm sorry. If you have questions, ask them. I know personally, I'd much rather someone came up to me and asked me a question than just stared at me. That makes me feel uncomfortable, that makes me feel upset. But if someone just comes up and goes, yo, what's that about? I'm much more willing to admit what the situation is and try and help them understand what's going on for me and maybe others that self-harm. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this video, is to raise awareness. It's something that's very deep in my heart, that I want to help people understand this kind of thing. I've done talks to the police, I've done talks in schools around addiction and mental health. And you have your people that don't care, they're not willing to learn, they're not really interested. But I've also had a lot of people ask amazing questions, very in-depth questions, very astute questions. They've listened, they've considered what I've said, and that makes a big difference to me, to feel like I am helping others understand better. And I know a lot of people that have mental health issues that I know do get better self-worth and more self-esteem from knowing that through their experiences they can help others understand more. They can help others be better with the people they know that might have a mental health issue or self-harm or whatever it is. I'm going to do a video on addiction later on. That's something that I'm a bit worried about, because I don't want to be too honest on a channel that my family see. But we'll see. I can always edit some bits out if I have to. Not safe for work warning for my dad, maybe. Okay, so another point that's on this list that I was going through, because I got a bit sidetracked, I'm sorry, is that people who self-harm are manipulative. This is another big one and goes hand in hand with the attention-seeking one. I'll read what it says on this website, and it's that self-injury is more about relieving tension and distress than it is about manipulating others. Although some individuals report starting the practice as a means of getting attention from someone, very few report this as a primary reason for continuing the practice. So again, we're going back to the fact that maybe someone has cut for attention, but a lot of people that do that don't continue on in that behaviour. They get the attention, they get the help they need, they get that situation resolved, and they're done, they're happy. People that continue self-harming are much less likely to be manipulating people through that behaviour, to be using that as a weapon, to be doing that for negative attention seeking. It can be a manipulative thing, and I've known people say, if you don't do this, I'm going to cut, you don't do this, I'm going to do that. And that is a sign of an unhealthy mind again. And sadly, people that are ill have that behaviour sometimes. It's more typical in personality disorders, especially borderline personality disorder. I certainly don't want to feed the negative stereotype of that, because I was diagnosed as BPD for some years and it affected me badly. I was treated very badly in hospital. I was treated for the wrong thing. If anyone's curious, my diagnosis is now complex PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression and schizotypal personality disorder, which lies on the schizophrenia spectrum but isn't quite as severe, thankfully. I may go into a little bit around my PTSD and my diagnosis at some point in a separate video, we'll see. If anyone wants to know any more about those diagnoses or anything, just drop me a message or a comment, anything's fine. So another point that ties in nicely to this is that all people who self-injure have borderline personality disorder. So no, a lot of people do have borderline personality disorder that self-harm, but there's a great amount also that don't, a huge amount that don't. A diagnosis doesn't always lead to one specific behaviour. You can never say that all people with schizophrenia are this, all people with BPD are that. It doesn't happen. No all exists. That's like saying all white people are privileged, all black people are criminals. It's stupid. Absolutely stupid. BPD does have a tendency to show itself with self-harm. That's one of the coping mechanisms of that disorder, mainly because I think it's a disorder that has similar traits to maybe PTSD. It sometimes can be brought on by trauma. But a lot of people that self-harm don't have a diagnosis, they don't have an identifiable mental illness, they maybe have another illness, whether physical health or schizophrenia or, I don't know, OCD, for example. It can go from one extreme to the other. You can never say all of anything. I mentioned this briefly earlier, that there is different types of self-injury and self-harm. There's no just one way of doing it, and I don't want to go too deeply into this topic. I don't want to be promoting it. I don't want to be giving methods out to people, but it's more than just cutting. It's more than just burning or hitting things. There's a lot of different ways to self-harm and to self-injure. Addiction can be a self-injury method. Self-sabotage can be a self-injury method. In terms of maybe, you know, destroying relationships you have that you cherish because you're worried you're going to get hurt in the long run, or you don't feel that you're worthy to have good things, so you destroy the good things in your life. And most of the time it's an unconscious thing. It's not a conscious, I'm going to ruin this because I don't like myself. It's a subconscious thing of, well, I'll push this person away, I don't want this person getting too close, I don't want this thing happening, I don't deserve it, I can't handle it. And so another big one, misconception, is that anyone who self-harms is a goth or an emo. Okay, I kind of look like an emo, I know, or a goth, whatever you want to call me. I get goth a lot in hospital from by the older ladies, which always makes me laugh. They see someone in black with a band t-shirt on, a hoodie, dyed hair, yeah, total goth, obviously. Yeah, whatever, that's not important, I don't matter in this. Basically, self-injury excludes no one. No job, no race, no sex, no age, no diagnosis, no life situation. Anyone can self-harm. Anyone could have a mental health issue, whether you're rich and you have a perfect family and a perfect house and a perfect car that runs nicely and is expensive. You've got the perfect children that acts perfect. You can still be ill, you can still be depressed, you can still self-harm. Depression and mental health is no respecter of persons. Okay, so I realise I kind of skipped a few things, so I'm going to head back, kind of backwards a minute. So I'm going to describe what is self-harm. Okay, so self-harm or self-injury refers to people deliberately hurting themselves. It's usually done in secret without anyone else knowing. Some young people or people do it once, never do it again, and others become addicted to it. I'd like to point out that it is an addiction. You get an endorphin release when you cut, just like you do when you play sports or you eat a chili or you eat chocolate. It's the same chemical response in your brain, and that becomes an addiction. Your brain becomes used to linking cutting or whatever it is with that endorphin release, and you become addicted to that feeling. So the most common type of self-harm is cutting, but there's many other types. As I say, I don't want to get into the types, it doesn't really matter. This video is about the generalised topic itself. Self-harm is usually done because someone is under mental stress or mental distress. It becomes a habit usually for dealing with difficult emotions when someone is pressured, distressed, upset, angry, disappointed. Any negative emotion usually can be linked to self-harm, and I've known people cut when they're happy. Again, for the endorphin rush usually, but also sometimes to punish themselves for being happy. They don't feel they deserve that good feeling. They don't think they deserve to feel better than they have done, so they cut to bring themselves down, or they cut so to punish themselves. And people cut usually to cope with something, to cope with feeling numb or pain or distress or negative feelings, thoughts, memories, flashbacks, nightmares, problems in their home life, problems in their relationships, problems at school. People that do it are trying to change how they feel by replacing their emotional pain or that pressure with physical pain, that release. I know personally when I cut, I get a tense feeling here in my chest, and when I cut, it's like someone does that slowly. I get a release. I get a temporary escape from what I'm feeling. But that being said, it is certainly not a positive way to cope. It's certainly not a healthy way to cope. It's a way of coping, certainly, and I know if I didn't self-harm, I probably wouldn't have made it to where I am today. But I also know that if I hadn't self-harmed, my life would have been a lot better. It would have been a lot easier, it would have been a lot less stressful. I wouldn't have had the midnight trips to A&E, the receptionist saying, "Oh, sit down, Rebecca, we'll book you in." You know, they knew my name, they knew my date of birth, my address, they just locked me in. So the moment they saw me, "Sit down, we'll sort you out." I would be treated negatively in the hospital units because I was a repeat person that was going in every couple of days at least for my self-harm at one point, or I was being admitted quite often, and they saw it as almost like a BPD and attention seeking kind of thing that gets linked with self-harm, and sadly it was nothing to do with that. I was cutting to cope. I was cutting so that I could make it through every day to the next, and every second to the next. Yeah, we'll carry on. So, some ways of avoiding self-harm. I think we'll do a bit about this. So, some self-harm replacement techniques are ice cubes. Try holding them in your hands, putting them on your arms so that you still get some pain, but it's a safe pain. You're not going to hurt yourself or cause any damage. Eating a chili is something I've heard, not particularly one that worked for me, but the heat and the discomfort can cause some pain. And again, with chilies, you do get that endorphin rush. People suggest wearing the rubber band and snapping it when you want to cut so you get pain again, but it's not causing that damage. Using a red pen to draw on the areas you might want to cut. Exercising, scribbling with a red pen on pieces of paper. Deep breathing, relaxation, meditation, prayer. Focusing on something around you and doing 4 things you can smell, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can taste, and 1 thing you can see, or whatever order you want to do. It's normally 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I personally do 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't like doing hearing because of my voices, so I skip that one out, but you can do it in any combination of that. If you find it hard to remember these things, write them down, put it on a little card, maybe put it in your purse or your bag so you can just pull it out if you need it. But obviously one of the biggest things that I would advocate is talking to someone. Whether you ring a crisis line or the Samaritans, and I'm going to leave numbers in the description, or you talk to a friend or your partner or your family or your doctor, whoever you feel that you can talk to, it might be a teacher even, or a priest, a bishop, whoever you feel that it will listen to you and take you seriously and will genuinely try and help and want the best for you, then I would completely recommend talking to them. I know when I was at school I was worried about telling a teacher or talking to a teacher because they'd then have to tell my parents, and that put me off. There is a bit of a clause in schools and doctors and things that if you're a risk to yourself or others, they have to tell someone. But self-harm with a doctor is private. They will never tell your parents unless you are doing it to the point it is life-threatening. I self-harmed when I was 13. I was taken to doctors at 14 and I told them about it, and it was never mentioned to any of my parents. It was barely in my records because I asked them to keep it kind of private. So don't feel like you can't talk to people. Don't feel like you can't be honest to people. It's hard for people to understand, definitely, self-harm, especially if they've never done it or known anyone do it before. That doesn't mean they don't want to help. That doesn't mean they can't help. A good way to help a friend who self-harms is just listen to them. Just be there. If they need someone to be accountable to text them in the middle of the night and say you're still safe, do it. Whatever you feel you can personally do without putting yourself at risk, do it. I've had some amazing people in my life that have helped me so much. They've always been there for me at whatever hour of the day, and I've never really taken advantage of that in terms of messaging someone at 2 or calling someone at 2 in the morning and be like, hey, I need you. But it's knowing that people care enough to make that offer that helps. Don't forget to look after yourself though while supporting people as well. I had friends that self-harmed and we would sometimes trigger each other. So be careful with what you say, be careful of how you show your self-harm, be careful of what you say in terms of your graphic descriptions. Just as you need to look after yourself, you also need to look after your friends. But again, always just be there for people. If you want to check in with a friend but you are worried about saying the right thing, honestly, the fact you're trying and the fact that you care enough to just be there for them is going to override any wrong thing that you might say. You're not going to say something and your friend's going to go, well, I'm cutting now. It's, you know, knowing someone cares makes the biggest difference, or at least personally it did for me. Knowing someone is there for me and loves me and wants the best for me is what gets me through some days. It's knowing that there are people out there that want to help me, that knowing there are people out there that love me, and that if I was to hurt myself, they would suffer. If I was to die, they would suffer. And now I've got a little dog called Titch, and she's such a lovely little thing. I think she's an angel in dog form, to be honest. The way we met was amazing, just everything about her. But she gives me a reason to get up, she gives me a reason to get dressed and get out in the day and actually move out of bed in the morning, and do things, see people, go out. I think we all need to find our reasons to get up in the morning, whether it's a person, an animal, a hobby, a job, an interest, anything. Find something that you enjoy, find something that you get satisfaction from and you find that makes you happier, that lifts your mood. And something physical, especially in terms of, say, exercise, running, jogging, yoga, anything like that, because that does release endorphins, but you're doing it without damaging yourself. In fact, you're doing the opposite, you're helping yourself, you're helping your body. Diet is another key thing. I'm hardly one to talk, I live off sugar. I don't really eat, but I have a lot of sugar. But if you're not eating the right foods, you'll get lethargic, you'll get heavy, you'll get tired, you'll feel down. Eating kind of fruit through the day or vegetables, not particularly tasty, but even just an apple a day, as I say, keeps the doctor away. Cheesy, I know. But looking after yourself is a big thing, it is, and I'm not the best at that for me personally. I don't feel I deserve to look after myself, I don't feel I deserve to be looked after. But other people want to look after me and other people want me to look after myself, and for that reason I have to do it. And whoever feels out there that's listening to this right now thinks, well, I've got no one that loves me, I've got no one that wants the good things for me. I promise you there'll be someone. You may not know them, you may not recognise them as that person, but I promise you will have someone. And everyone has a talent. That's something I learnt in hospital. In hospital with people that literally couldn't spell the in Scrabble. And he's a very intelligent guy, very intelligent. And yet you gave that guy a guitar and he was like Mozart on a guitar. Like, he was amazing, honestly. We ended up dating, that's another story. I'll keep that one quiet, shall I? Yeah, I won't say your name. Matilda, we'll leave it at Matilda. Sorry, he's going to get angry at me for that, but never mind. Everyone has something they're good at, whether it's helping others, whether it's art or crafts or maths, history, learning, anything, swimming, exercise, eating right. I've known people that are so depressed they don't get out of bed for a week, and yet you give them a pencil and they do photorealistic art. Like, it's, you might not think you're talented at something, but I promise there'll be something. There will be something. I don't know what mine is. I'm still clinging to the fact that we all have one, but I know that's true, and I just want to kind of say that to you guys. Everyone has someone that cares for them, that everyone has something they're good at, and never lose sight of that, and just do what you can to get through each day, whether it's every hour at a time, every minute at a time, literally every second at a time. Sometimes even setting an alarm on your phone for a minute, and then you get through that minute and you think, right, I've got 1 more minute, set the alarm again. Getting through that way. Just keep fighting, keep doing what you can to get through each day, and just know that you are loved. You are so loved. Thanks guys, bye.